Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure of the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson, and I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, we continue our series, American Film Comedy from Slapstick to Screwball. And let me tell you, we're in Screwball country today. We're screening the 1937 classic, Nothing Sacred, written by Ben Hecht and starring Carole Lombard. And nothing is sacred in this wacky film. We'll be talking about that and much more after today's screening. Joining us will be Professor Maria DiBattista from Princeton University, the author of Fast Talkin' Dames, a study of women in 30s comedy. Now, enter the Screwball universe of Nothing Sacred. Welcome back to City Cinematheque. I hope you have enjoyed this opportunity to see really one of the terrific Screwball comedies out of this cycle of uniquely American humor. We have a guest here who has thought about this a great deal and written about it a great deal. It's a pleasure to welcome to City Cinematheque Professor Maria DiBattista of Princeton University. Some of our viewers may know her as a major scholar of British modernism and of Virginia Woolf. Others may know her as the author of Fast Talkin' Dames, which is a study of female characters in American comedy and ladies who do talk back and talk fast. So welcome to City Cinematheque, Maria.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Jerry.
Super. So let's just begin with that subject that has fascinated you for a number of years, and that's this question of the representation of American women, you know, in comedies, the comedies we call screwball comedies of the 1930s and 1940s. What makes this an interesting set of women and artistic representations and hit it, kid.
Well, first of all, I guess I was attracted to them initially because when I was growing up and seeing these films on TV, there was a kind of vitality, a resourcefulness, a kind of confidence that when you're growing up, you're attracted to and want to emulate. So I began sort of thinking, like, where did they come from? Because honestly, I didn't really see any contemporary models like that. I think something had actually sort of happened. So this was a time in American history, actually, when the economy was sort of tanking. People were sort of thrown on their own resources. And the more I started looking at these films, it started to occur to me that it were the women who were somehow sort of finding ways to sort of cope with adversities, advance their own schemes for happiness, and at the same time learn a little about themselves and learn how to sort of love the world they are in and love the people in it. So there's something about the kind of independence of these women, the kind of democratic impulse of these women, and their resourcefulness and their ability just to seem to have fun.
Well, the point well taken, and I'm just in a certain sense underlying your point. They're women who, all of whom, whether it's recognized initially by people around them or not, they're women with agency. That is, they are taking charge on the terms given in the little story world they're in. They're taking charge of a bunch of things, and not everybody around them necessarily recognizes that that's what's happening. But that's also part of their energy and
their appeal.
Absolutely. And I would just add to that one of the lines that goes through many comic traditions, but of which they're a part, is they're tricksters. That's part of their agency, is they know how to read what's going on in the situation and not necessarily represent things to other people exactly as they are, very key to today's film, but to be looking for this longer term outcome and have a lot of fun along the way while they're doing it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you started with the word agency, which is not a word they would have recognized, because that by the time you're using the word agency, it already means that you're kind of nervous that you're losing it. So I think that what we have here is that these are women. A lot of them are represented as women coming from the country, as we see in today's film with Carole Lombard. A lot of them are city bred, coming from like working class families and sort of trying to sort of make their world. But you're absolutely right. There's a sense that as they're entering into the world, they have to sort of make a place for themselves, often for their families as well, not in this, but in others. Even if they're heiresses, like, you know, like Lombard is
in My Man Godfrey.
In My Man Godfrey, there's a sense that there's a lot of life and reality to be negotiated. So they have to, you know, they have to sort of be quick-witted. They have to sort of figure out. Sometimes where they're they're tricksters. They have some gimmicks sometimes that they're going to push. But part of it is their love of innovation, their love of kind of playing with people, but also I think they see it as a way of kind of exploring themselves and actually how the world works. I think they're really interested in like what goes on here, and they want to find out without sort of paying too high a price for it. And then I think that's where the tricksters is a kind of defensive mechanism as well as a kind of aggressive way of making sure that your agenda wins out in the end.
You know, they're very interesting because they're moving in different social spheres.
Right.
And so sometimes they're going to be initially disoriented, so they've got to orient themselves, you know, to get whatever it is they want. And they've got to discover, you know, how to do that. And you brought up that today's film is one of those patterns, that is the girl from the country who has to figure out how to deal with this place she's always desired to go to, the big city, to get out of Warsaw, you know, and to get to New York City. So
She's kind of like the American Madame Bovary. She's so
yeah,
instead of Paris, it's New York, and she's always wanted to go there. And I think this is a recurring desire. I know it was mine when I was growing up in a small town. Well, now it's no longer small, but New York was the Mecca for me. So when you see these films, yeah, I can identify with that.
I can see that we share a childhood in the sense that I watched the urban, as a child like you, on television. I watched the urban dramas, particularly of the 30s, but of the 40s, and I was absolutely fascinated by these cities that seemed very different from the suburb where I was growing up. Why does James Cagney get to be in that place?
I mean, the funny thing is, when I especially seeing this film again, Nothing Sacred, I mean, it actually sort of begins with a kind of warning, you know, it's a city of skyscrapers, but then immediately it tells you that it's filled with city slickers and people who are not just sort of trampling on the truth, but just making sure that if anything survives, it's going to come up even phonier than ever. So it's like these films are actually warning you. You want to go to the big city,
but watch out.
Watch out. And yet it never really gets in the way of their desire to be there.
Let me do the tragic versus the comic. The comic version of this is coming to the city and you find out that there is just much more, it was different, but there's much more fun you can find, and you can find your place. And then if you want to go with the gangster films, well, it's a better place to die.
Yeah.
It's a better place to have a tragic trajectory, you know, than elsewhere. So let's go back just to the very starting point of this film, and then we can, you know, dive in from there. And its very title, Nothing Sacred. So what do you make of that title, and what directions does it point?
Yeah, I mean, you have to sort of think for a minute, sort of Nothing Sacred. I think after you watch the film, you realize that at the very least it means that this film is not going to be pious about anything. So every sort of ideal or cherished illusion about what America is. I mean, it's interesting that, you know, the doctor has written something that he feels has been terribly sort of neglected about 6th greatest Americans, and you have, you know, Pocahontas coming, all of these kind of myths about sort of American grandeur and American philanthropy and American art and American ethics and American integrity. None of that is going to withstand. Nothing is sacred. So whatever the sort of cherished illusions and ideals he's going to go after. And that includes not just the sort of city slickers, because that in some sense for Ben Hecht is kind of easy pickings. He can make fun of all of these sort of, smart-ass
Right. No, he premier urban journalist of the first half of the 20th century. Right. Yeah.
Right. And and he was he wrote the front page. Later became His Girl Friday. So he's always interested in stories about sort of newspaper men who are trafficking in kind of lies and scandals and not doing the truth. But what is surprising about this film is when you go to the country, they have their little scams as well. And so you're not going to talk to somebody unless you get a coin for. I love that. And not only do he get the coin, but he has to make sure that it's the first guy he meets. He's got to get paid for his time and then make sure that the coin is actually true. When we meet Hazel Flagg, as endearing as she is, when she finds out she's no longer dying, the first thought is, can I take this $200 and go to New York? I mean, it's just a little bit of it, just a little bit. And the doctor says, well, there's a sort of problem of my job. Just as a kind of aside, and then there's the ethics. So you can't think,
I love that.
You can't think that somehow this is, if you want to recover something kind of morally sound, you go to the country, because they say yep and nope. They're not going to be sort of fooled by all of this stuff. No, everybody's venal in their own way. And when that little kid comes out to sort of bite Frederick March as he's going down the street, you realize there's something in the vision. Everybody is potentially childlike, but childlike as sort of feral.
Right.
So it's a very cynical film, and it's kind of surprising how cynical it is. You really have the sense of I don't know, of a kind of ebullient humor. It's not despairing. It's cynical without being. How should I say? It's cynical without being acrid or sardonic.
Yeah. Could I call it light cynicism?
Yeah, light cynicism.
Cynicism light?
Like cynicism is good for you kind of idea.
Well, and it's also, an equipment for living in the modern world. It's it's a strategy of how you can adapt and not end up permanently injured.
Right.
And so you can kind of keep moving along if you have this cynicism and skepticism, because of that, and you can't be too innocent, and thanks for bringing this up. You haven't said it exactly, but and you can't be too sentimental, because again, talking about the trip to Vermont, there are all kinds of ways the American mythology sets up the corrupt city versus our pastoral, site of the real virtues that are being corrupted, and there's really kind of no alternative here. You're going to be in trouble one place or another, and so but you can reinvent yourself. Right. In any event, including the end of the film, in which they're going to be reinventing themselves somewhere. Right. Somewhere else. Right. And you feel that in some sense they're going to be enjoying themselves. I think that's that's the incentive. Where can you find, you don't want to be taken advantage of, but at the same time you don't want to be so virtuous that you're not going to enjoy yourself. And you certainly want to avoid sentimentality. I mean, if you want sentimentality, then you go to MGM and all those dreary melodramas and women suffering. I like it here where women are a little feisty, and they're not, they're willing to be called dames, which at the time was really a term that had a kind of connotation that you were kind of maybe sort of morally sort of suspicious. I remember once sort of talking to someone who said, how could you title a book Fast Talking Dames? It's a kind of slur against womanhood. And I said, no, I actually think that's the sort of genius of the American language. You can take a term like that and you can invest it with values and qualities that are actually life-serving. Well, first of all, I want to say, I'm so happy you brought up the idea of just fun in this, fun achieved through this cynicism light and managing it. And that's also one of the pleasures of the film, is that we see them achieving a life of fun. Right. And of course, we all understand that this cluster of films is coming out in a moment of tremendous societal crisis of the Depression, and is proposing that there are strategies of fun. There are strategies of connecting with this vitality. But you also link it, and I want us to mine this just a little bit. This is a movie that is in love with language.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. So just tell us a little bit, because we're both fans. The language is performed brilliantly in the film, but it also issues from Ben Hecht. A little bit about Ben Hecht.
Yeah, well, Ben Hecht, again, started as a journalist, also involved with very avant-garde modernist sort of literature, but then kind of got the call to Hollywood. An amazing sort of playwright. Front Page is probably his first and most famous early work. And then did a sort of series of films. This is one of them. He then worked with Hitchcock on Notorious. But what I think marks Ben Hecht, and he also did Underworld, he did Gangster, so he could move in various genres. Right. And what's sort of interesting about how he could move in various genres, and I think he sort of discovered it didn't matter whether you were doing, like a crime film with Cagney, or you were doing Front Page, or even His Girl Friday Later. Right. It was written by someone else, but it was essentially his language. They all spoke the same American vernacular. Okay. That this was really a kind of seedbed. So when talkies were really emerging as a sort of technical possibility, it's really interesting to me that they weren't trying to reproduce kind of high-tone language. Even the Broadway stage or Shakespeare, whatever, people were talking the language of the streets, of the language of the time, which meant there was a kind of democratic, populist instinct to just speak the words that people were speaking every day, but also the words that they were inventing. So Hecht, I think, was really alert to this. So whether it's Cagney, who's a kind of fast-talking dame in a way,
absolutely,
in the gangster genre, or whether you're, Carole Lombard, or either here or in My Man Godfrey. Trying to think of some of the earlier ones well, the fastest would be Rosalind Russell on His Girl Friday. Right. The fact is, their language is very much sort of the language of everyday, and it connects, I think, them and the spectator to what is going on at the present moment, and they're just sort of naming things. So Hecht, I think, saw this, and so you have words like slickers and taffy pull. The eel, I think, at one point he describes. There's also a kind of poetic charge to this language. He describes Hazel as having the soul of an eel and the heart of a tarantula. Like, where are you? Like, who sort of talks? So, but. It's very American in the kind of idiom, and again, it's like nothing sacred. How could you take this poor suffering soul of everybody, but you're unmasking. And so language both points to reality and it kind of unmasks all the sort of pretensions that want to sort of keep us from sort of seeing things as they are. On the other hand, you have the yep and nope, Warsaw. So, and he can mine that for comedy, yep and nope and yep and nope, and the kind of reaction shots you get, like this, you're a talking animal, and this is what you do with it, talk. And I love it when he goes in to see the doctor, and he's so into the rhythm of yep and nope, as if that's all. If you go to Vermont, that's the only response you're going to get. And he says, well, can you tell him I'm here? Ask him yourself. And it's like, oh, they can talk. It's just they're not going to talk to you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And then he goes in, and then he finds the doctor who really wants to talk about.
Yeah, he really talks
about.
He has one of the great lines in the film. And again, this is the sort of Ben Hecht coming out with all of his satiric venom, but also glee. When he talks about newspapermen, the hand of God could go into the mire and couldn't elevate them up to the depths of degradation. I mean, how low can you get? You can't even bring them down to like the nadir. So this is like cynicism upon cynicism, and yet, you don't feel depressed. You don't feel, you don't feel depressed. You don't feel like disconsolate.
Well, there's also, that then kind of segues us in a certain way, because first of all, there's just this incredible energy
Yes.
with which this is being done. And so while in that sense, it's I call it paradoxical, that there's something cynical or venal being said, but the manner, and this is the performance of it, and the other thing is it's a double sense of performance, because it's a performance we know is a performance, but we're also aware that in the world these people are living in, they're all performers in that world. I mean, they're making up stories for one another, or making these things. They're aware of themselves as performing their own story, not as actors, but as characters.
As characters.
Characters in this story world. So, I'm interested in also this intersection between that verbal energy and the kind of physical comedy and physical energy that's going on in the film. What do you make of that? And then also let's put that in the context of Carole Lombard's performance.
Yeah. Well, in terms of all of the screen heroines of American comedy of this period, she is the most sort of physically inventive and loose and graceful. I know Katharine Hepburn has her moments. Myrna Loy at the beginning of The Thin Man is introduced by, a three-point landing where she kind of cascades into the bar. But Lombard had a background in slapstick, so she knew how to use her body expressively, and she wasn't afraid to take a tumble. She wasn't afraid to let her body go all different directions. And I think that this innate sort of physicality was intensified in her because she has, I think, in her temperament, in her face, a kind of childlessness. But she never loses. So in His Girl, in My Man Godfrey, where she finds out, or she thinks that she figured out that Godfrey loves her, there's a scene in the shower where she goes, "He loves me," even though she's, when he puts her into the shower, "He loves me," and all of a sudden she reverts to this kind of child exuberance and happiness because everything is happening, and you see the same kind of access to the inner child. So when you first see her, the emphasis, I think Wellman, the director, wants you to sort of think about her face. And there are a lot of shots in the film that try to get you to look at Lombard's face in different moods. So the first time we see her, she thinks she's sort of dying, and she's not as, as sort of sad and self-mournful as you think. But then in the course of the film, you see these kind of her face becoming differently expressive and expressing kind of, she says, when she finds out she's not going to die, I don't know whether I'm happy or I'm miserable. I'm a little bit mixed up, and her face can really, it sort of registers that. And yet, after she finds out she's going to New York, there's that wonderful scene, I guess, maybe it's not even worth noting, but I always love it, where the camera just follows her sort of gambling down the street. She's so happy. I'm going.
Yes.
So there's that part of her where all of a sudden she's exhilarated. She's physically exhilarated. And then when she goes to New York, you're right, she starts performing, and she kind of gets into it, almost like a child likes to play. She's very playful. And all of a sudden, though, she becomes more and more aware that there are different roles to play, and they're different people she has to interact with. And there's two scenes I would call attention to. The first is just very simple, when Egelhofer and the three, and she sees these Europeans, and they're not American, and they're very sort of stodgy. And when she's introduced to them, she does this wonderful thing, again with her body. So her body is speaking in a way. She's introduced, and she does this thing with her head, like this. So and you get the sense that there's this kind of Prussian salute, that she's accessing some sort of memory. And then the second, of course, I would say the set piece is the battle royal between her and Frederick March. The first time where she's knocked out, she keeps missing and she keeps missing. And here you sort of see how orchestrated that scene
yes,
actually
absolutely.
is.
Absolutely correct.
It's orchestrated so as to make her seem as if her gestures are unavailing, but in the end, she's the one who knocks him out. So
Correct.
you have that one scene where he pushes her, but the real top of it is when she comes back, she gives him that sort of right hook. And he now is in the lumbar position. And then I love this scene where she just has to go,
Right.
and off down he goes. So this to me is like the consummation of her sort of physicality, even though it's accompanied, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. It's not her words this time, it's her physical expressiveness. So of all, here's where you see her apprenticeship in slapstick really coming to her aid.
Well, I'm in complete agreement with that. And one of the other things that I think that's created in this film and some of the other Screwball films is, this overlapping sphere, not only with the antecedent slapstick, that this is not exclusive. This is not just exclusively verbal comedy. You're not listening to.
Right.
You can listen to this as radio, but you're seeing it as film, and there's an incredible physicality to their delivery, etc. But this is also overlapping in one of the great eras of American animation.
Right.
And so, and so there's this way in which I say it as a compliment. At a certain moment, people would have said, well, it's just like a cartoon. And they would say it as a put down. And I would say to the other, I said, thank goodness. Because,
that's interesting, Jerry,
because if you look at something a little bit later, like a Tex Avery or whatever, the way in which they're managing physical movement and gesture and this kind of freedom of expressivity, even if the point of view is cynical.
Very
there's that physicality about it, that they're stretching in different directions. And also, you bring up so well with your examples, just this whole issue of things like timing and a gesture, the boom. Yeah.
He pushes, but she,
Yeah.
And it's a kind of distinction between, what each of them can do, but also how, in some sense, they're related to each other. Yeah.
Well, and also it brings up the fact that while this is a film in which the verbal is supreme, there's no question about that, and thank goodness, subordinate to that is still all kinds of other jokes that are just given by things like rhythm, like the yep and nope, but it's the rhythmic presentation, of that, or it's the movement within the frame, just everything you've been talking about with her.
There's another element
that
you brought to mind when you were talking about animation. I was thinking initially of the scene where she goes to the nightclub and you have the heroines from history, and then again, your point about performance, she's going to take her place as Hazel Flagg the Skeleton. But what it also sort of suggests to me is something that I've sort of thought about, didn't know quite what to do with. This is the first Technicolor Screwball comedy, and what does color bring? Actually, color makes everything a little more garish. It's more appropriate to such a cynical. So that the kind of softness.
You know what I have to do? I'm going to have to leave this to our viewers to think about.
We out of time.
No. To think about the use of color in here and their memories, for example, of the use of color in all the color cartoons. It's
that's right.
Absolutely a great thing. If you've enjoyed what we've been doing here today in discussing Nothing Sacred, and I hope you enjoyed Nothing Sacred, please have enjoyed Nothing Sacred, you can find out more about City Cinematheque. Visit our website at CUNY TV, www.tv.cuny.edu. You'll find plenty of information there about this show and all the other marvelous programming at CUNY TV. Maria, a very fast and rich and fun 30 minutes.
Incomplete, but
dedicated.
Ongoing conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Jerry.
We got to keep talking about it, but thank you so much for being here. And thank you for joining us today on City Cinematheque, and join us again as we continue our strolls through the archives of film history. It's bye for now.